I've been the overnight security guard at Rose Hill Cemetery for 7 years. It's a lonely job, but quiet. Peaceful even. The dead, they don't cause trouble. It's the living you've got to worry about. Kids sneaking in, drunks looking for thrills, sometimes grief pulling people into strange behavior. But most nights, it's just me, a thermos of burnt coffee, and the soft hum of the radio. That's why I noticed him right away. It was a Tuesday night, cold and clear. I was doing my 12:45 round when I saw a man standing by grave 44, just past the older part of the cemetery, the part where the stones are moss-covered and the names are nearly worn away. At first, I assumed he was a mourner, maybe someone who couldn't say goodbye in the daylight. But something fell off. The motion lights lining that path didn't trigger. Not a flicker. He stood perfectly still, facing the headstone. No shifting, no wind in his coat, if he was wearing one. The air was cold enough to see your breath, but I saw nothing coming from him. Just stillness. Heavy, unnatural stillness. I debated walking up to him, but honestly, I didn't want to spook a grieving man. Or myself. At 2:13 a.m., I passed the same route again. The figure was gone. I didn't think much of it, until I noticed the ground. The soil in front of grave 44 looked disturbed. Wet, dark, soft like it had been turned. I figured maybe frost had melted there, or maybe a maintenance worker had done something earlier, though I knew no one had scheduled anything on that side. Curious, I leaned in. The smell hit me before anything else. Earthy, sure, but fresh. Too fresh. That part of the cemetery hadn't had a burial in decades. I pulled the log from the office the next morning. Grave 44 belonged to a man named Felix Tranter. Died in 1989. Single plot. No exhumation orders, no recent visits logged. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Long shifts, isolation, they can get to you. But 2 nights later, he came back. It was almost 3 a.m. when I caught the shape on the feed from camera 7. There he was again, at grave 44. This time he wasn't standing. He was crouched, hunched over like a man whispering secrets into the earth. His back to me, shoulders moving slightly, like he was breathing heavy, or crying. I couldn't tell. I left the office and went out there. Took my flashlight, though it had started acting weird earlier, flickering even with new batteries. When I reached the grave, he was still crouched there, head low, unmoving. I called out, "Hey, cemetery's closed, sir." Nothing. I took a step forward, and the flashlight died. Completely. No flicker, no warning. Just dark. I stood still, heart pounding, trying to listen. There was no sound, just the wind and something else. A low, wet whisper like someone talking through clenched teeth underwater. When I finally managed to switch on my backup light and aimed it at the stone, he was gone. No footsteps. No crunch of gravel. Just gone. I nearly reported it. But how do you explain that without sounding crazy? I tried brushing it off, but then I started noticing things. Every few nights when I passed grave 44, there'd be muddy footprints, sometimes leading up to the stone, sometimes away from it. Always barefoot. Human-shaped but wrong. Toes spread too wide. No heel marks. Just sunken impressions, as if someone stepped out of wet earth. The weirdest thing, though, were the fingernail marks. Deep, jagged scratches along the edge of the headstone. Not carved. Scraped. Like someone clawing from the outside or inside. Some fresh. Some older, almost smoothed over. But they kept reappearing. Always more of them. Always deeper. One night, I found a splintered fingernail wedged into the stone. Still red at the base. That's when I stopped trying to explain anything. I stopped going near the grave unless I absolutely had to. The cameras don't help much. Sometimes they cut out just before anything happens. Sometimes they glitch, showing that same crouched figure over and over in a loop, like a corrupted tape. I showed a frame to one of the groundskeepers, just to see if he'd react. He squinted and said, "That kind of looks like the old caretaker we had in the 80s. Name was Tranter, I think." I didn't say anything. The name on the grave? Felix Tranter. He was the night caretaker before me. The record says he died of a heart attack in the office. Alone. Nobody found him for 2 days. They buried him where the cemetery meets the woods, grave 44. I guess it made sense at the time. Maybe he didn't like being replaced. Or maybe he never really left. Now, even on quiet nights, I hear soft murmuring when I pass a section. My flashlight flickers. The air feels colder. He doesn't show up every time, but I always know when he's near. There's this smell, fresh dirt, mixed with something else. Something sour, like breath trapped in a sealed box for too long. I keep Grave 44 off the visitor maps now. But sometimes people still wander over there. And sometimes they don't come back right away. I used to think cemeteries were just stone and silence. But I've learned some graves don't stay quiet. Some people don't rest. And some things crawl back up to remember what it was like to breathe. Story 2. I've worked security for Ashridge Memorial Cemetery for 6 years now. Most of the job is quiet. Monitors, gate checks, logbooks. You get used to the silence out here. Too used to it, maybe. But there's one part of the property I've always avoided. The old service tunnel that runs beneath the maintenance building. Just a narrow stone corridor that links the main office to a few old storage units near the north edge. We don't use it anymore. Not since the renovations in '99. I'd never been inside it. Not until the storm last month. Lightning had hit the eastern power line. Knocked out the monitors for that side of the property. Maintenance was backed up, and the supervisor asked me to manually check the perimeter, including the tunnel, just to be safe. The entrance is behind a locked panel near the tool shed. I had to pull the key from a rusted cabinet no one had touched in years. When I cracked the door open, the first thing that hit me was the smell, like rot and mildew, but sweet in a sickly way. It reminded me of wet leather, old basements, and something vaguely biological. The air inside was colder than outside, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees the moment I stepped through. My flashlight beam jittered across the walls, stone, cracked, sweating with moisture. The overhead lights buzzed, then dimmed. A pipe must have been leaking somewhere. Still, it wasn't anything I couldn't handle, until the radio on my belt began to hiss. Static. That happens in old buildings, sure, but this was different. Amid the static, I heard a voice. Not just any voice, my voice, but saying things I hadn't said yet. Left, it whispered. A second later, I came to a fork I didn't expect, left or right. There was no mention of it in the map taped behind the control desk. I turned left, heart pounding. My own breathing echoed too loudly in that tunnel. And then came the footsteps. They were soft, barefoot, deliberate, not rushing, not dragging, just pacing me. I turned fast, light cutting back through the dark. Empty. No sound now, no movement. The static on my radio cleared up like nothing happened. I pressed on. The tunnel narrowed, walls drawing closer. Ahead, I saw a bricked-up alcove. Rough mortar. Looked like it had been sealed in a hurry. And then, a voice from behind the bricks. Whispering. You're early. It said slow. Familiar. Like someone disappointed I'd shown up too soon. I backed away fast. No one should be down here. I radioed dispatch. No answer. Dead air again. I made it out 10 minutes later, lungs tight, skin clammy. It felt like something had clung to me the whole way back. When I got to the surface, the storm had stopped, but the cold stayed in my chest for hours. That night, I pulled the old blueprint from the office cabinet. The tunnel was there, mostly intact except that alcove. It wasn't marked. No wall. Just an open maintenance chamber, connected to electrical lines and piping. But there was a note in red pen scribbled in the margin. Collapse in '96. Fatality. No recovery. Seal. I asked our older groundskeeper, Baird, the next morning. He got real quiet. Said a man had gone down there alone, trying to patch a leak during a power outage. Floor gave out. No one found him. No body. Just his boots left near the wall. I didn't ask again. Now, every time I walk that part of the property, even above ground, my radio glitches. Same static, same flicker. Every time, it always clears when I pass the same point beneath where the tunnel forks. A few nights ago, I got brave or stupid and walked near the tunnel entrance again. I didn't go in, but as I passed the sealed door, my radio clicked once, then played something. You're late this time. I don't know what I'm hearing. Echoes? Residue? Or something worse? All I know is I've stopped wearing my radio when I'm near that place now, and I never walk there alone after midnight. Even the silence feels like it's listening. Story 3. I've worked at Sycamore Grove Cemetery long enough to stop being scared of the usual things. Graves don't bother me. Neither do the occasional howls from the wind or the rustling trees. You get used to the quiet out here, even start to like it. But there's one place I've never liked. The old storage vault behind the North Chapel. It's not fancy, just a reinforced concrete shed with metal doors, meant to hold unclaimed remains. Mostly urns with no next of kin or boxes of ashes waiting for transfer. We call it the crypt vault, but really it's a storage closet for forgotten souls. I never liked going near it. Not because of ghosts. No, I'm not that kind of superstitious, but because the damn lights never worked right. Flickering constantly, buzzing overhead like wasps trapped in a glass jar. Maintenance came out 3 times, replaced the ballast, the bulbs, even rewired the fixture. Still buzzed. Still flickered. You'd think it was cursed. One night about 3 weeks ago, it was especially foggy. The kind of thick fog that feels alive, like it's wrapping around you. The temperature dropped out of nowhere. I could see my breath inside the office, which never happens. It's well insulated and usually warm from all the monitors. At 2:46 a.m., one of the motion sensors near the vault pinged on the main screen. Camera feed came up blank. Just static. No movement. No animals. Just nothing. Protocol says we investigate any triggered motion alerts. I sighed, pulled on my jacket, and grabbed the utility flashlight. I remember thinking it's just a possum, or maybe a bird flew too close. But when I stepped outside, it felt wrong immediately. The air was heavy, not just cold, thick, like I was breathing through wet cotton. Every step toward the vault felt slower than it should have been, like walking into a vacuum. The fog didn't lift, even when I waved my light around. I opened the vault door and stepped inside. Nothing moved. No wind. No sound. Just rows of metal shelving, each lined with urns and cardboard boxes. Most were labeled, some not. A few names I recognized from the paperwork. Jane Doe, Baby Unknown, Wards of the State. Sad, but not uncommon. Then I turned around to leave, and I froze. One of the ceramic urns had fallen from the top shelf and cracked open on the floor. Ashes spilled across the concrete like gray sand. The label had slipped loose, but landed facing up. My last name, Dowlett. I just stood there staring at it. Heart pounding, throat dry. That's not a common name. I checked the records right then and there with the vault log. No one named Dowlett had ever been processed or stored here. Still, I swept the ashes up carefully, placed what I could back in the urn, taped the crack, and reshelved it. I put it far in the back, even taped the label over again. Next night, same urn, same shelf, same crack, same spill. I thought maybe someone was messing with me, though why anyone would pull that kind of prank in a cemetery vault was beyond me. So I moved the urn to a different room entirely, storage shed B, locked it inside a cabinet, and took the key with me. 2 nights later, the urn was back on the shelf in the vault. Cracked. Ashes scattered again. I didn't sleep much after that. Last week, I stayed late. Told myself I'd catch whoever was doing this. Brought a chair, thermos, sat in the hallway with a clear view of the vault door. At exactly 3:09 a.m., the temperature dropped again, sharp, sudden, like a cold breath across the back of my neck. Then the vault door creaked open. On its own. No wind. No pressure. Just a slow, groaning swing, like someone invisible was letting themselves in. The lights inside flickered, buzzed, then cut out completely. I stood. My flashlight clicked on, and I stepped forward, heart thudding. The thick air hit me again, like walking into wet blankets. Then came the whisper. Quiet, delicate, but clear enough that I felt in my bones. You forgot me. I turned in place. Lights swaying over the shelves. No one. Nothing. But when I reached the shelf with the urn, it was cracked. Open. Label curled off, half burned. The name was there again. Dowlett. Since then, I've had nightmares. Waking up in the vault, covered in ash. Something breathing in the dark behind me. Always at 3:09 a.m. I went digging into my family records, even called an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. Asked if we ever had someone, anyone, who went unburied, unclaimed. She said no, but then she got quiet. Said there was a cousin, one that wasn't really spoken about. Born still, back in the 70s. Unnamed, never baptized, never officially recorded. No one knows what happened to the remains. My grandmother passed away before she ever told anyone. I don't know if the urn belongs to that child. I don't know if it's even real. But every night since I've checked, and every night, 3:09 a.m., the motion alert goes off. I mute it now. I don't go in there anymore. I keep the vault locked, but something always finds its way in, and the whisper keeps coming. You forgot me. Story 4. I've worked at Everpine Cemetery for 12 years now. Most of the place is peaceful. Birds, old oaks, the occasional visitor bringing flowers. But there's one area the grounds crew avoids. We call it Section C. It's where the oldest graves are. Mid-1800s, maybe earlier. Back when people still feared being buried alive. You'd see stories from that era, doctors declaring folks dead only for them to wake up in the ground. So families installed safety coffins, fitted with little brass bells connected by string to the inside. If someone woke up underground, they could tug the string, ring for help. Of course, those bells have all rusted away. Most are missing. Some broke off entirely and were taken by souvenir hunters or time itself. But a couple months ago, I started hearing them again. It began subtly, just a faint jingle. Around 2:30 a.m., always when I was making my final rounds. The first night, I chalked it up to the wind. The second night, I thought maybe some metal tag or wind chime from a nearby house. But by the third night, I couldn't ignore it. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, measured. I followed the sound once, brought my flashlight, and started toward the old part of the cemetery. The ringing grew louder. Not constant, just a few light dings, then silence. Then again, like someone was pulling with a weak hand. I stopped when I found it. A grave I didn't recognize. The headstone was badly worn, edges cracked, name completely illegible. The soil looked disturbed, sunken in a bit, like it had settled oddly. Right near the center of the grave, half buried in dirt and leaves, was a small brass bell. It swayed gently even though there wasn't any wind. I knelt beside it, not out of fear, more out of disbelief. The bell looked old but intact, still attached to frayed cordage that disappeared into the ground. I didn't touch it. When I got back to the office, I pulled out the registry. We've got digital logs and old paper backups. That section, the grave I saw, no record, not in any map. No name, no next of kin. As far as our files go, that plot doesn't exist. I told myself it was probably an old, undocumented burial. Records were spotty back then, but something about it lingered with me. Over the next few nights, the bell kept ringing. Same time, same rhythm. I stopped checking after a while. I didn't want to admit it, but it unsettled me. The kind of deep, hollow unease that clings to your ribs long after your shift ends. Then last week, something changed. I woke up at home, middle of the night, to the sound of a bell. It was distant at first, like it was coming from the trees behind my house. I live a few miles from Everpine, nowhere near any historical buildings. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and listened. It rang again. This time it was closer, clearer. I got out of bed and followed the sound to my living room. That's when I saw it. Words written in the fog on the inside of my window. Not yet buried. No one else lives with me. I don't own a bell, and I hadn't fogged the window myself. I left the lights on the rest of the night. The next morning, I went back to the cemetery before sunrise. I made my way to Section C. The grave was still there, still sunken, still unmarked. But the bell was gone. Instead, there was a small, narrow handprint in the dirt, pressed into the soil like someone had reached up from beneath, then vanished. I filled it in. I didn't tell the office. They already think I'm the weird one who likes the late shift. But every night since, I hear the faint ring again. Sometimes from the cemetery. Sometimes from somewhere closer. I've taped the windows shut, blocked the vents. I don't sleep much anymore. And I keep thinking about those words. Not yet buried. Not dead. Not gone. Just waiting. And if that bell rings again tonight, I don't know if I'll answer it. Story 5. Most nights, my job at Hollow Oak Cemetery is about as thrilling as watching grass grow. I sit in a small security office, sip burnt coffee, and cycle through 12 camera feeds. The wind rustles the trees. Sometimes a stray cat triggers the motion sensors. And occasionally, we get raccoons that think they own the place. But camera 4, that one changed everything. It started small, just a skip. 1 second of corrupted footage every night at exactly 3:06 a.m. Not earlier, not later, always the same time. At first, I thought it was a software bug, maybe something with the power connection or a bad cable. But I'm not new to this, and I've seen bad feeds before. This was different. When I pulled the footage and slowed it frame by frame, I expected to see a blank spot or just a bit of visual noise. But it wasn't blank. There was one single frame, just one, frozen in the middle of the skip. It showed a person standing in the west garden, head down, still as stone. It was too fast to notice in real time, just a flicker. But when paused, the figure was clear as day. Except the face wasn't. It wasn't pixelated. It wasn't obscured by shadow. It was just blurred, like a smear. Like someone took a wet brush and swirled their features into nothing. That garden hadn't been used in years. No scheduled burials. No visitors. Even the landscaping crew avoided it, because the ground stayed soggy no matter how dry the season was. Nobody should have been there. Still, I try to be rational. Maybe a trick of the lens. Some reflection. Maybe someone vandalizing the grounds at night, though the idea didn't sit right. But then it happened again the next night. And the night after that. Each time, the same single frame. The same figure. Only, each night, they were just a little bit closer to the camera. By the fifth night, they were almost at the tree lean. Still facing down. Still motionless. No tracks. No signs of entry. The motion sensor didn't even trigger, just the glitch in that silent image, appearing like a ghost between seconds. Then just like that, it stopped. The sixth night? Nothing. No glitch. No figure. Just wind and raccoons again. A part of me was relieved. A bigger part of me was unsettled. Things don't just stop like that. Not when they've been that consistent. Something was off. I knew it. But I didn't say anything to the staff. It's not the kind of thing that earns you a promotion, talking about ghosts on company cameras. Then came yesterday. I went in early to unlock the west gate for the maintenance crew. It was foggy, thick as soup. The kind of morning where sound carries weird and everything feels a little too quiet. As I walked down the gravel path toward the gate, my phone buzzed. System alert. Camera 4. Movement detected. I froze. My heart jumped like I'd swallowed ice. Slowly, I looked up at the camera post that sat above the west garden. The camera was gone. All that was left was a severed cord, snapped clean, wires exposed and dangling. And right below where the camera had been muddy footprints. Human-sized, bare feet, facing the pole, like someone had stood there, looking directly up at the lens. I called in a repair request, told them vandals must have pulled it down. They shrugged and said they'd replace it next week. I didn't say a word about the figure or the glitch or the pattern. But that night, something else happened. Driving home, I checked my rearview mirror. I do that a lot. Occupational habit. Only this time, something flickered. Not a shadow. Not a trick of light. A blurred face, just for a second, sitting in my back seat. When I whipped around, nothing was there. I told myself I was exhausted, that maybe I nodded off at the office and dreamed it. But when I got home, I left every light on. I double-locked every door. I sat in the hallway until sunrise, clutching a baseball but I hadn't touched since college. Now, every night since, I've seen it again. Not the figure, just flickers, in mirrors, in a glass door of the microwave. Once in the reflection of my phone screen while scrolling. Always at 3:06 a.m. Never a full face, never a full body, just enough to know it's watching. I don't know what camera 4 was picking up. I don't know if it was even meant to be seen. But I know this, that figure didn't disappear. It just got closer. And whatever it is, it doesn't need cameras anymore.